It's in here somewhere.
AskGunQuestions.com is a website that we built back in 2007. And since then, for the last 15 years, people have been able to ask questions of something that we've built back in 2007. Since then, join us now as we start a new series to answer gun questions.
And good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, I guess, or wherever we happen to be. Or when you're listening to this, I'm echoing. And then now, right? That's because I had both open, I think. Hello? Oh, you're muted. I'm here. There we go. I am attempting to find out. Why can't I find my thing? I don't know where I put it. There it is. Looking for the answers or the questions. There we go. So sorry, this poor introduction this morning. This is Ask Gun Questions. This is a video series that we're running on the YouTube, and we go live every Saturday and answer gun questions that are posited. Is that the right word? To our website called AskGunQuestions.com, which has been on for a long, long time now, and there we go, a little distracted, and now I got everything where we want it. It's been around for a while. People ask questions, and then we answer them, and we've done that in various different ways. We've got Clover Tech joining us from Texas. Thanks for jumping in.
Hey, man, appreciate it.
You bet. So, thanks for joining. Let's see. So we'll start off with, we got a couple of three new questions, so that's pretty neat. And then we'll dig back into the older questions. We usually go live for about an hour. And this is a live project, so we leave about a quarter of the screen here as you see it wiggling there to or for the comments that are coming in live. So if you're joining us live and you have a question, feel free to ask. If you have some input on the answers that we're offering, feel free. Okay, so looks like one came in this month. What front sight stake size on a Springfield 1911-1990 model? So I'm guessing that means that we're talking about the slide on a 1911, and since they're saying front sight stake size, I'm assuming that means that the front sight isn't a dovetail on a Springfield 1911. I'm asking because I have no idea. Usually the front sight on a 1911 is either going to be a little hole drilled in, and then something like a screw or whatever comes up from the bottom, or a stake, I guess, like a punt, like a rivet or something comes up from the bottom and holds it in place, the little blade on the top of the slide. Right. Or there's a dovetail cut out perpendicular to the slide on the top, and then a slide or a sight is slid in. Do you know when that happened or any of that story? I mean, I know that the two styles, but that's about as much as I know.
No, I'm not up to speed on the 1911s enough to know the difference. But no, I think I think that's going to be the squared off style on that.
I mean, the front sight is just like a blade, and then there's a hole going through there, and something
No, it's got a little post, but it's not dovetailed or anything.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I believe.
So I'm guessing that Browning just decided a front sight was a front sight and put it there. And then later on, people said, oh, well, there could be a billion different front sights if we put a dovetail in. That's an interface that we can, create all kinds of parts to fit into.
Right. Right.
So
I know 80 thousandths on those square ones. It seems like 80 thousandths is a common size.
Oh, so you're saying that hole that I'm talking about being poked through the slide, that's a square, not a hole?
Correct.
Okay, and then the peg or whatever that comes up through there, is that common in all the sites accepted, or does each site have its own proprietary other side?
What do you mean?
Like whatever comes up and holds the sight in, is that just a screw? So like pretty much any screw works as long as it fits in your gun, or is it the sight is going to come with its own piece that matches it, and it's going to be like a proprietary thing where you want to have them together?
It shouldn't be proprietary.
Okay.
I think it would. Yeah, I don't know that I've seen anything proprietary. There may be.
So in other words, the front sight stake is pretty much should be a common size.
It
Or shared
should,
size.
yes, it should be. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to have. Well, you're talking about a common size among all 1911s, or a common size among
Exactly.
site manufacturers.
Exactly,
Okay.
because if site manufacturer ABC decides to make something, they don't care and even want to work with site company 123, right? They want each separate other something.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know from one 1911 to another. To be quite honest with you, I don't know who uses what. You know what I mean?
Exactly. So I think
So I
that's
don't
like
want to say I don't want to say they all use it, that style or anything else, because that I doubt very seriously they all use that style. But you got to, I know for a fact Springfield does, but outside of that, I don't know.
So then they just asked the same question again, front sight stake size on a 1990, and then added more info. So it sounds like because they asked the question twice, and because the way they identify the gun is different each time, I'm guessing that they're not real super familiar with this. My suggestion would be, if they're listening, to take it to a gunsmith, a gun shop that has a gunsmith, where you can actually talk to the gunsmith. That's not every gun shop, and it's not good or bad. It's just that sometimes they're available, sometimes they're not, depending on the shop. But if you have a chance to talk to somebody, or I guess a knowledgeable gun shop staff would be able to give you insight as well. But yeah, I think you need somebody who's dealt with a whole bunch of 1911s to know off the top of their head what that answer is.
Yep.
So we're going to count it answered, even though we're not always answering them well necessarily. My goal is just to get the questions out there so that people can. I think there's probably some insight as to what kind of questions people ask too, right?
Oh yeah.
Got a real one coming in from somebody live. So process. This is Black Jake. Process to get a CCW permit in California. So, well, it's going to vary. I mean, you can get a CCW in California, depending on the county. It's more difficult or less difficult. One of the consequences of all the situations that have been going on the last couple of years, though, is it seems that the CCW is more obtainable than less obtainable, from what I understand.
Yeah.
Do you have any more insight specifically?
No, because I'm not in California, unfortunately, so I don't have a clue. I will say that from what I hear from people that I know in California, it's complicated. So I would say seek out, and you just alluded to that, G, right, with with what you said. So I'd say definitely seek out somebody that has one, that lives in California, or maybe an organization. I'm trying to think. Does California have what's the state organization for California? Do you know?
Well, they have the State Rifle and Pistol Association. They've got California, what's it called, calguns.net, and then calguns.org. But I'm going to also recommend, and I don't know if you're in San Diego, but there's one called San Diego Gun Owners. And I think it's kind of a situation because San Diego is just, I don't want to say like they're the only company, the only city that's mean to gun owners, but well, I don't know. It's probably more of a situation because I think all of California is mean to gun owners. I think that this is more of a situation where these individuals decided to stand up and do something, and they've been doing it effectively. So I don't know if you're in San Diego, but if you're not, I suspect they might give you some lead into a place that's more in your area. But if they're giving you a suggestion to somebody in your area, you know that they're going to be devoted to your civil rights. So there's other gun owners, there's other gun owners of California in this organization, Orange County, Riverside, and San Bernardino. The San Diego gun owners is the one that I found first and the one that I follow on Instagram. And they're super active at keeping gun shows in their area and offering information. So as little as we know has to do with the complexity of the California laws and the fact that they keep changing all the time. So I'm going to recommend this as your source because they're in the state and they're going to be more in tune with the differences of the counties and that kind of thing. Thinking of getting a guard card first. I don't know that county, and then apply, then more training, then insurance. I know that's a good question. So I'm not gonna challenge the order you're doing stuff in there. That's an order to do it. As far as I'm assuming that means a security guard type of card or certification or something. from my experience, those cost more in time and money than a CCW. But in California, that's a good question. I don't know if that's the case. Have you heard of that or any of these other things before?
I mean, in passing, I don't necessarily, you know what I mean? I can't speak to it. I could see how going that route could be easier, right? I mean, as far as getting approval.
So that's the thing. I don't know if the counties in California are consistent, but I don't know if
I don't think they are. I don't think they are.
Yeah, I'm sure they're not actually. But that some of them are going to require you to prove that you need the CCW. Others are just like, oh, you asked, here you go, right? And it's going to kind of be that. I think it's that broad of a difference, between them. Some of them are like, you're never getting it, right? So I guess if it was the kind of one where it's like a may issue, like we might give you this then if you had a security guard certification, that might be the kind of thing that gives you more whatever, but I would say talk to somebody in California, just so that you don't waste your time. Now, if it's a personal growth and interest thing, I'm never going to stop you from getting credentials and learning. It's always going to be useful, even if you don't go the path that you started on. You know more than, for whatever path you do end up, you just know more than you would have. So always a good idea. Learning seeing how instructors operate and, the different strategies and meeting other students. It's always a good idea, even if the topic isn't necessarily, ideal or perfect or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm not a big fan of security guard training, mainly because, at least for regular people, because of their, their version of, what's that called? Like a law enforcement has a certain rules of, what's it called when they have, like, in the military has a different,
like the rules of engagement.
Yeah, thank you. Rules of engagement. Yeah. Security guards, their job is to secure the property, and they have they're not like sworn officers, but they do have a different obligation, a different set of things behind them. They got the company's clout behind them, so you're going to learn things that have people behind them, like lawyers and money, where we don't have that in real life. So some of that stuff, as long as you're good at separating it all, awesome. But if you're new to it, I think that going to something at a level that has some sort of authority, learning that first means you have to unlearn something to learn your regular CCW stuff.
Uh-huh.
And I'm not throwing some people can learn anything in any order, but I think just in general, I'd say learn yourself, then learn how you can help others. But again, opportunity and availability, if that's the first thing you can get your hands on, or if it's inexpensive or available, yeah, it's training, it's information, and you can always use it to compare with everything else you're going to do.
Right.
But we all know security guard training almost always gets sort of a comedic, everybody looks down at it, unfortunately, because there's very little consistency or regulation. They kind of teach whatever they want, and they kind of have to. If you're a security guard for an empty lot and a security guard for Disneyland, it's two different things, and they have to teach them differently.
Yep.
Or you would hope they teach them differently.
Right.
Okay, so now I'm guessing this might be the same person. I disassembled my Springfield Armory, 1911, 9mm, so it's not the same person. When I reassemble, I put in the slide stop, but the slide will not release. How can I correct this and release the slide? I think I know what that is, but I'm going to see if Clover says the same thing as I'm thinking. So in other words, they took apart their 1911. When they put it back together, the slide won't release.
Yeah.
Oh, you don't even have 1911s?
Yeah, I mean, I do, but
well, I'm thinking when you got that barrel and that little circly thing comes down from the barrel, what is that thing called? The thing that connects with the slide stop. So if you're not familiar with 1911s and you go to put your first 1911 together and you don't realize I'm assuming that the 9mm version has that part, I don't know what that part's called, but the part that's hinged at the bottom of the barrel. And if you don't have that little circly thing, if you're not letting gravity hold that little circly thing down, and you shove the pin in behind that circle or in front of that circle or something, not through the circle, then you lock up the gun, right? You just create a gun that can't move back and forth.
Oh, you're talking about the
slide stop.
The barrel, barrel nut.
No, that's not barrel.
Block.
Is that what it's called? The thing that holds the barrel from flopping all around, yeah.
Yeah, the barrel block.
Yeah. So that's I think what we're talking about here. So if you can imagine holding your 1911 slide up and your barrel is in it and it's a complete slide and you're about to interface it with your lower and you're sliding it on, if you're holding it up in front of your face, then gravity is going to let that little barrel lock, is that what you call it, is going to let that thing swivel down. It's going to hang down. And ideally you slide it into your lower and you hold it up in front of your eyes, and as you see that circle thingy, that Cheerio hanging off your barrel, slide past the hole in the frame in the lower where your slide lock is going to go. That's when you want to put it in, right when the circle matches with the hole. If you put it in front or behind, well, I guess it had to be behind because you won't be able to close the gun or do anything. The other way, you won't be able to open the gun or do anything, I guess.
Right.
I don't think it's the worst thing in the world because it happens to everybody who doesn't, hasn't thought about it when they put their first 1911 together. So as soon as we figure it out, ask somebody, hear about it, then you realize it, and it never happens to you again. So it's one of those things. It's just fairly common. It's about the only, well, maybe not the only, but it's one of the common issues with a 1911. I guess the most common is scraping up your slide or your frame, I guess, every time you put it together because of the, am I trying to say that little scrapey thing you'll get on it when I'm keep saying slide lock. It's not a slide lock. There's another name for that piece. Black Jake is saying maybe watch YouTube videos on how to clean. That's a great idea. Yeah, we're sitting here on YouTube answering the question on YouTube. Now this person is asking the question on a thing, so we're just answering it. But that's a great point. You could have got tons of videos that can explain that. Now, Clover, do you happen to have a specific video that has that by any chance?
On 1911, no, I don't believe so.
I had one, but I sold mine years ago. I only owned it so that I could stay familiar with it. And at some point I said, I don't even take the thing out of the safe, so I'm not staying very familiar with it. So I'll sell it.
I haven't made anything as far as disassembly or anything like that in quite some time because of policy issues and try to stay within those guidelines to keep it on the platform. Now, that being said, even though there are problematic areas with that type of content on the platform, there's no doubt, there's some on here. So, one other thing I was going to say is would having the magazine in when you do that create some type of a difficulty because of the follower or whatever?
Oh, that's an interesting point. Yeah, you should never have your magazine in the slot in the frame when you assemble. So I've never done that. I don't know. That's a good point. Yeah, does it move something out of place and kind of work against you, basically?
Right.
Wood is agreeing to check out a YouTube video. Well, and then you don't have to just check out YouTube. Sure, I'm sure there's different options out there for assembly and reassembly of a 1911. Maybe one of the videos that's out there, like a DIY type of video. Now we got an interesting one. Why is my replica locking up? Well, it's a vague question, but I can't even think. Like, I'm trying to think of, I do have some replicas that, have movable parts and stuff. I would think, just without having any more specifics than that, more than likely it's because replicas tend to be kind of sloppy, and often like a part or a pin will move because it's sloppy and that pin will get in the way of something. So I would say just do a really good look with a flashlight and make sure there's not something like slipped or moved or, adjusted while you were fiddling with it.
Yep.
Otherwise, you could have a potential broken part or something that breaks, like a spring that breaks and doesn't push something back where it should be or something like that. And that can be pretty tough if you're not super familiar with the normal operation. To see something broken doesn't help you. When you see something and it doesn't look right, that's when you identify. So it's going to be a tough one. And plus, we don't have any idea. Is it locking up with the hammer? Is it locking up with the rotation of a revolver? Is it a rifle? Is it opening a Springfield? Yeah, we have no idea what it is. So we'll give it as much as we can. But now it's up to the people watching. We have a couple of people watching this morning or afternoon or whatever this is for everybody. So feel free to give us a question number. Somewhat. Well, Clover, you picked the numbers. We got between 1 and 600. So if you want to give them a range.
Yeah, we've done some. Let's go 300 to 301 to 400 or something.
Okay, so give us a number in the 300 range. Otherwise, we'll just pick one to start with. I'll pick one out of that range to go. Let's start with 475. We haven't done that one before. So this one says, I've purchased guns before. I've also bought a firearm in the month of June. I went ahead and purchased it, but they needed to order it. The guy said it would be maybe 3 to 4 weeks to get it in the shop. Then the 10 days would start from there. So a few days later, I was just looking at another gun shop, and of course I purchased another gun. The guy said it was okay for me to buy the gun because the original gun I bought was a few days ago, don't have a serial number attached to me. I went ahead and purchased the gun and started the 10 days right there. I got a call from the gun shop at the second place telling me it was denied for purchasing 2 guns in the same month. My question is, am I in trouble for going in? Am I going to lose my trouble? Am I going to lose my guns, or will I still be able to get them? Holy moly. Well, first off, I am sorry that you have to live under that kind of infringement and bullshitness.
Right.
So
Wow.
this has to be a state where they have a permit to purchase, and then that means that they have to ask permission from the state, literally the state they're living, whether or not they can purchase a gun, and then the state deems it okay. They give you 10 days. So I guess that 10 days has a couple of questions in here. Now, first off, do you know what state we're talking about with this many clues yet?
No.
I don't either. So I'm going to go look and see if I can't figure it out. I do know that I did write on my calendars for waiting periods purchasing a gun. Oh, crap. Do I not have waiting periods as a separate thing? Dang it. Still no. See, now I figured out I got to make waiting periods a separate map or separate page in my list here.
As far as answering the question is pretty simple.
Okay.
I mean, he's not going to lose his guns. He just, I mean, that's a safety tyranny. I agree, but that's a quote unquote mechanism. I was going to say safety mechanism, but I don't even want to say safety because it's stupid. But that's a mechanism in play dealing with possession. So, yeah, if you've paid for them, it's just a matter of you're not going to be able to pick that one up until next month.
Well, okay, so that's going to be store policy and depending on that kind of thing. So I want to say I agree with you probably, but because can you imagine being a store owner in a state like this? If there's all kinds of weird games, and not necessarily games, but from a gun shop's perspective, somebody comes in like this and tries to buy one, and then I can only buy one, and this one isn't the perfect price, or this one isn't the perfect color, all the different things, and then they go to another shop and do buy it. Does that get into like that first shop now where they're supposed to hold a gun for a month in case the guy comes back a month later? You know what I mean? I can see gun shops that are going to be, because just knowing gun shop owners for over the years, I can see gun shops that are going to be like, nope, if you can't buy it right now, it's going right back for sale. You can't leave a deposit. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know what kind of policies. So I agree with you in a normal things, but in case you got a shop where the guy's had issues before, or she's, the owner just doesn't take it anymore, I don't want to sue. And that's what I think he's talking about. Is he going to lose the guns that he has on hold that he'd like to buy as opposed to his guns that he owns? I don't think there's anything in place that says if you screw up the procedure, we're taking your ability to own guns. I don't believe that's the case anywhere.
So some people that I know, and we know a lot of people across the country that have to deal with this mess, right? So one tactic, I guess you could call, or whatever, that I know a lot of people use with, when they have the waiting periods in the 1 a month, is they use the layaway style program. And that's, again, we're talking about gun shop, the policy of the actual place. Maybe they don't offer that, but just saying that may be an avenue to look at if you're adding to your collection on a regular basis or whatever the case may be. That may be a mechanism to use. That way, you kind of stagger everything out, and the gun shops don't have inventory sitting or whatever for you, at any given time, and you haven't actually put out all the money at one time. And I think it might be I think that's why a lot of people utilize that, it seems like.
I'm reading it again, and it says, I've purchased guns before, so this person knows what they're doing. They have purchased guns before they own guns. I bought a firearm. I also had bought a firearm in the month of June, and I don't know. I guess I could go try to find out when this. I guess I can move over just here and find out when it came in. This came in June, so I bought a firearm this month and went ahead and purchased it. but they need to order it. And he said it would take maybe 4 weeks, 3 to 4 weeks to get it in. And then my 10-day wait wouldn't start until there. So that sounds like I agree with what you said 100%. There's no way that person who ordered the gun for you is going to have a fit and then not give it to you, more than likely, right? That gun is yours.
Right.
Now, when they get it and you're in some kind of a shift because of you already bought a gun, and I don't know how often they give you these 10-day little permit or authorizations, but if you've got to wait a couple of days and that guy bought the gun as an order, I would say at the weirdest circumstances, that guy would be a real douchebag if he was to sell that gun that you ordered. And he told you don't have to worry about it. And I can't tell you what day it's going to get here, but, go live your life. And whenever I call you, that's when the 10 days is going to start. I can't imagine that gun shop owner then saying, nope, I sold the gun because you weren't here that day, right? So that one I think you're safe with. Now, a few days later, I was looking at a gun shop and I purchased another gun. He said it was okay, but then call from the gun shop telling it was denied. Now, the reason he was denied is for this purchase in 2 guns in the same month. So I'm guessing that's this original. I bought a gun in the month of June, not this one that he ordered, because they don't even know about that one yet. So you're definitely not going to lose that gun. You're not going to lose the gun that you already bought in June. So what you are going to get is you got a denial on that one that you tried to buy at the second place. It's possible that guy is going to go, well, somebody else came in and that was a great deal, so I sold it to him or her, right? That might happen, and that's just depending on the situation and that gun shop owner's state of mind. But more than likely, as I read this again, this guy's got nothing. This person has nothing to worry about. Go get your whatever permission from the state for another 10 days. That will probably kill the first one and trigger the second one, and then get your gun that was denied with that one. Whenever that's settled, you're going to, wait about 20, maybe the 3 weeks, and then get your next 10-day one so that you're ready to go when this one happens. But I think that's probably just inexperience, haven't bought a ton of guns yet and haven't experienced that yet. But that's hopefully what this is all about, because it's not like these are rocket science. It's just a matter of having experienced some stuff before.
Yeah. I've noticed, you said something earlier about the types of questions. It seems like there's a whole lot of questions on laws and regulations and legalities and things like that. And it's understandable because there's so much gray area, and it varies so much from jurisdiction to jurisdiction and whatever. And it's absolutely sad that it's that way. That's the comment I wanted to make on that. It's ridiculous.
That's a good point.
I'm certainly not the foremost authority. So when it comes to, how other states and things operate.
Well, and that's something that's frustrating. Do you figure that Shannon and Bloomberg sit around every once in a while just smoking a cigar and enjoying the fact that 60% of the frustration of being a gun owner is the stuff that they caused? Do you think they even realize how much
they don't realize it? They don't, that to be a fact. That anti-gun elements have no clue what laws and regulations are already in effect. They don't.
Exactly. And the sad part is, if you clarified it, if you made a really impressive looking piece of effort that would say, this is the complex, horrible situation that gun owners have to deal with,
they wouldn't care. They'd still want more.
Yeah, they'd go, oh, awesome. So let's see. Those are the gaps we got to fill to make it impossible.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, thanks for the roadmap. Appreciate it.
Yeah, seriously. All right, so, and that's actually one of the things I'm thinking about as I look at the future of the 2A History Project. I'm like, well, crap, if I just make it too good of a roadmap, I make it too good of a roadmap. Yeah. So, that's actually something I thought about. So,
are they going? Here's the next thing: is any anti-gun element. We all know that any anti-freedom movement typically. It's a few people with a bunch of lazy people that are just following, right, for whatever reason, for the emotional attachment or whatever it might be. So then you got to look at, okay, that's cool. You lay all that out, which is beneficial to us in the 2A community. Are you going to have anybody that takes the time to go through and dissect that and do things, on the anti side of things? And I just think that's far fetched. I don't think the anti side doesn't seem as committed to the cause, honestly, as any pro freedom side of thing.
No, you're 100% correct, and that's the underlying reason why I am still see it as worthwhile effort to keep people aware because the other side doesn't care, and they're like 3 steps away from just the next fad or the next super,
and a lot of it, you have to have. You spoke to it before by this person obviously had bought firearms before, the experience, right? A lot of these anti-2A anti-gun elements, have never bought one. I mean, think about the chick that went into the Walmart or whatever, right, and got denied and was like blown away because didn't even understand the process. Or when they talk about it's easier to get a Glock than a library book, right, or whatever the case may be, right?
They really think that. They're not even exaggerating.
Yeah, and it's like they don't have the experience that we do as firearm owners. They don't have all the experience with dealing with all of this stuff, right? So even if they had the resources that you've put together, that other people put together, are they even going to understand them enough to be able to deduce anything from it? And I think the answer to that's no. Not without first getting out into the community. And then if they got out into the community, here's the thing. If they got out in the community, they go, well, I'm reading all this and I want to plug all these little, loopholes in these regulations and lock it down completely. No guns for anybody, right? And they're dedicated to the cause. And, I'm going to shut down the 2A here in the United States. Here's the roadmap. G-Web's done give it to me. All I got to do is, fill in the cracks. And they go, oh, crap, I don't understand what's going on here. I'm going to have to get out into the community. I'm going to have to, go experience some of this to figure out what's going on. Well, what are the odds that us as a community, once they get in and they see how awesome and welcoming and everything else it is, what are the odds that person changes their entire mindset? We've seen it over and over with people that were anti-gun and become pro-gun or anti-2A or whatever you want to call it and become pro-2A, right? So what are the odds that they set out on a path to destroy us and end up joining their ranks in the process?
No, actually, you're 100% dead on there because that's happened more often than it hasn't ever happened the other way. It always happens that way. It's actually pretty interesting.
Right.
Oh, so that's actually pretty cool. So if I had the clip thing like Blizzard has, I would clip that part. I don't have the clip thing on my own. I don't think I have the clip thing on my own thing, do I? I'll have to look. Woods is saying I have that now. How does this make any sense? Oh, wait, no. First, he was saying, how does it make any sense that I have to fill out this stuff when I have 2 firearms in my pockets as I'm buying the third one? But their perception is that we get all upset and we don't have a gun in our pocket and we run into a gun shop and buy one for violence or whatever.
Right.
Here's 1,000%. Here 1,000% with the gun shop. My FFO would hold it for me. I've bought many guns from them. Other customers would have their guns set back. So you're thinking, in other words, you're saying it's just the relationship you have with the shop or whatever.
And that's a matter of communication, right? Too. I mean, if you don't call the gun shop, you're not interested, or they think you're not interested, or whatever, right? Lack of communication. I would think as long as they're aware of the situation, you're aware of the situation, and you've called and you're talking with them, I don't see a problem. Just doesn't make that's bad business to me. I don't see a problem with it.
Well, and I was going to add history maybe is a word. Like, if you've been in there and screwed them around, if you're one of those people that come in and go, hey, can I see this gun and this gun and this gun? And then, you leave and then you come in and go, let's say, can I come in and buy a Colt Python? And they've got a Python there. And then you leave and then they still got the Python and you come in with a Python and go, can I get a holster for this Python? And you're that guy, right? And then, so, and then you're like, hey, can you bend over backwards to help me order something?
Right. Yeah.
So whatever you call that, don't be that guy.
Yeah. No.
Let's see. So here, that would be the sheriff department. They decide on the pass denied. Thanks for the comments. I messed up by not addressing those while we were in the middle of that one. Let's see. I bought a SIG 226. I won't need another one for a long time.
I don't agree with that statement one bit. You need another one yesterday. I hate to tell you.
What's a SIG 226? Is that a 9?
Yeah.
I don't know. I have owned SIGs before. I have a lot of respect for SIGs. I've liked SIGs, and I mean, they're a neat company. They come from Germany, but they're definitely USA now.
Unless you bought an old one.
Well, Sig Sauer, that tells you, well, unless they're just saying Sig Sauer, got a habit or something. That's the thing. There's Sig Sauer, there's SIG USA, and then there's SIG Arms, and there's
And then
probably more
there's
than that.
and then there's JP Sauer, and then there's Sauer and Sons.
Well, that's the other side, exactly. So I was
Yeah.
going to say, in the past, when I was getting done doing stupid YouTube videos and playing show and tell, I started doing like the Saturday Night Special type of research type of stuff that I really enjoyed. And I had done the Glock models and some other Glock stuff, as you know, I like Glock and I respect the gun. And then I read the book Glock America's Gun, and now I was like, whoa, Glock is so much more than just a brand.
Yeah.
Like either by intent or by consequence or by accident or by intent. Like I said, it's kind of hard to say sometimes, but they've been so involved in so many aspects of the world and the United States and guns. It's just, I mean, think of it. A lot of people consider handguns, they call them Glocks. So it's sort of like Kleenex or tissue or something like that. So anyhow, I started trying to figure out the Glock numbers, because at first it's impossible, right? They're just make no sense, and they still make no sense. You just have to memorize them. And then you start looking at SIG, and I started looking at some of the other brands that are like SIG, and it's really complicated. So anyway, I guess the long way of saying I had done a little bit of research to prep a video to try to figure out SIG, and this was like years ago, and they've added elements to the whole story since then. But yeah, like you say, I forget what all they're called on the Sawyer side, but Sawyer was one company, SIG was one company. They came together for a project or two and became SIG Sawyer at a time when we all decided, boop, that's what we're going to call them for the rest of the time. They both exist on their own. They came together for projects, but you know, they're not mutually exclusive or anything. Like they both exist on their own, and they have done things together. So it's sort of it's a very complicated one. And then their number system is like Smith and Wesson. Like, good luck. You got to get yourself a book and start memorizing, because Glock's got like what 10 or 12 numbers to memorize. Like these companies have, I don't know, dozens and dozens of numbers to try to figure out.
Yeah.
Now, is there any rhyme or reason to the SIG one? Am I wrong?
I'm not and never have been into SIG, not modern SIG, not since the 80s or whatever. So, and even then wasn't into SIG heavily. So I couldn't tell you.
So I was into guns my whole life. And then when I was a kid, SIG, there was no SIGs. Like they existed, but not in this country, right? Nobody owned SIGs that I know of ever, until I started getting into movies and TV, I guess, and probably somewhere in there, some movie must have used a SIG. I can't think of one, but somebody used a SIG. And then when I started going hanging out in gun shops and started buying guns, you hold like a Lorson and you hold a SIG, and you hold an HK and you hold a Ruger, and you know the difference between a $900 item and a $70 item. I mean, there's no comparison. So I knew and understood what SIGs were, but to me, it was like going and looking at Cadillacs or Lamborghinis or something.
Yeah.
Right. And then I owned a SIG, and my SIG was awesome. I knew some people. Should I say this? I knew some people, and I bought a SIG that was his issue gun as a SWAT cop here in Tucson. And I was like, that's cool as hell, right? I got a SIG that a guy who is a SWAT cop, who I know, a friend of mine, owned, and I had that guy's gun, right? And that was pretty cool. And then I also had bought another SIG, a little one, and I really dug them. And then later on, I bought a third SIG. I mean, they're good guns. My problem is, if you buy 3 SIGs, then you have to figure out 3 different guns. There's nothing similar about a SIG except the name SIG on it. Like they don't have some unifying thing that makes all SIGs similar. At least the 3 I owned. And that was because of time and because of all these other reasons. Like sometimes it's SIG, sometimes it's SIG USA, sometimes it's SIG Sauer, and each of them are their own companies, kind of. I think they are actually all their own companies. I mean, it's the evolution of one company, but you know what I mean? Like different owners just said, well, it's our company now, or it's our engineers now. So yeah, it's an interesting thing to like, and I could see getting into it, and I'll give them credit for being good guns. My problem is that every SIG I owned, the magazines cost more than anything. They're just too expensive.
I've known SIG, I mean, for a very, very long time. Known, existed in the evolution and the history and stuff like that. What I've never, I don't know why, I've just never, with some of the older stuff, again, 80s and back, I find a deal. I'm not opposed to picking one up. Newer stuff just doesn't turn me on. And, I guess the last I really paid any attention to it and considered was probably back in, I don't know, maybe the late 90s, early 2000s, the Texas Highway Patrol went to SIG. Went to SIGs and N357 SIG. And I don't know necessarily which models. That escapes me at this time, but I had a little bit of interest. That sparked a little bit of interest then, and if I didn't get into it at that point, I don't know. But that being said, I did see a SIG in 10 millimeter, a P220 Hunter here several months back, and it did spark my interest in SIG again because that was an awesome handgun.
Yeah, I'm just searching here to see. I just noticed that this logo, is that what We Like Shooting took their logo off of? The SIG logo when it was like that?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
I never noticed that before. So,
Gizzard Gary, I think, stole it too.
oh snap! No, he kind of did. I was just seeing if there was some kind of a thing that showed what I was trying to think of. Like how the SIG and Sawyer came together. It was for rifles, I think, that they were SIG Sawyer, and then eventually, like SIG was the handgun one, Sawyer was the rifle one. They came together, made some kind of rifle or something, and I think it was for like a military contractors. It was some business thing. Anyway, so yeah, that's interesting. So I don't know. Do you know who would you say is the SIG person? Is there a SIG person? Somebody that just can't get enough SIGs and would know SIGs back and forth, the whole history of it?
Yeah, it would take me a minute to figure out who, but yeah,
I know people that like them, but I don't know anybody that pays enough attention to like really.
the gun snob's pretty heavy. That whole mentioned Gizzard Gary earlier, but that whole Hens crew, Gary Snob, Obnoxious, and Sarge, are pretty lean SIG pretty heavily.
I know there's a bunch of people that use the SIG Academy as like their home base. So there's some training people that dig SIGs, I think. But again, I don't think of them as being nerds about SIGs. They appreciate the machine and they use them. You know what I mean? But it's more of like, these machines work, instead of like, oh, I'm a nerd and this is the newest in the line of blah, blah, blah. Somebody like a Beretta nerd. Beretta is the oldest company, period. Like one of the oldest companies on the planet, period, let alone gun companies. So I could see somebody being a Beretta nerd. I don't understand it, but I could see somebody doing it, right? I just don't know anybody that's a SIG nerd like that. And that would be neat, getting a Beretta nerd, a SIG nerd, like a Colt nerd, getting them together and see what kind of boring stuff.
Right.
Let's see. So hopefully everybody's okay with like 20 minutes of SIG blabbering. Blackjack, that was blasphemy. Of course, you need more guns. Oh, so I guess that was all about whether I needed a gun for a long time. And that's where I was trying to say that I guess I can understand it. A SIG is a solid, awesome thing. It's like getting a Ferrari maybe, or maybe something better, like a more general car. What would be like a Mercedes or something, like getting a Mercedes and being like, I'm not going to need another car for a while. I'm good. Except then as soon as you need to go like to the beach and drive around on the beach, you're going to be like, well, I kind of need a Jeep. Now you mentioned 357 SIG, and that's a whole nother thing, but it's not really a question. So that would just be us blabbing about stuff. But so I'm trying to keep up with the comments here. Once they get robbed or attacked, the perception of self-defense will change. I don't know what we were talking about, but
I think he was commenting when I was talking about anti-gunners that and everybody is on that cusp, right? It's experience, and that's why we have to be patient to a certain extent. Now, don't get me wrong, a hardened leftist-minded anti-gunner in your face screaming is one thing. But we got people that just, I don't like guns, and that's basically what they say, and they walk off, and they've got some type of experience, negative experience with a firearm, and its emotions are a real thing. So we get into a situation sometimes where we lump everybody in. I mean, it's this all or nothing mentality, and it's really silly because what Blackjack out there is saying is 100% true, that experiences change, or perceptions change with life experiences. So what can happen in that person's life that today they hate guns, they don't want anything to do with a gun, they're scared of a gun, they're whatever, changes in their life to where they start to become curious, and then they get brave enough, right, whether it's through friends or encouragement or whatever, to go to the range and try something out, and they go, oh, you know what, this is actually pretty cool. It's not as scary as I thought it was. Wow, it's well worth, taking up to protect myself and my family, right? And then they get into the fun aspect of it as they practice and they train or whatever the case may be. And the next thing you know, they're diehard and they're on our side and they're fighting for our rights because, hey, government, you're not going to take away my right to self-defense. So it's a progressionary thing, and having that, laying an all or nothing mentality on somebody, which folks on our side often do, I think is silly. So, yeah, there's the book, the link. Go buy it.
I threw the Amazon thing into the comments and into the thing to the description. I don't disagree. I mean, you're right, and everything you said is correct. But I'm going to also throw out there that my thing has always been that whenever this started with once they get robbed or attacked, I don't think that we need to depend on self-defense or anything either. So I think one of the ways, and I hope to think that I like to think that the largest way or a very large percentage, well over self-defense, a way that we can win people over is to the message like, don't fear my neighbor. Like, we already own guns, they already exist, and you have been safe. That is enough fact to show that you don't have to worry about criminals. All criminals could leave tomorrow, and we should be able to have even more guns because now you should be even less concerned about what we do. Now, if we do something recreationally dangerous, hold us accountable just as if we were, water skiing and ran over a duck or something. But, that's the consequence of being not being aware or whatever. But I like the idea of just getting people to be aware of firearms and the recreational investment interests in them that have nothing to do with self-defense that are valid, mainly so that they can see, oh, well, I don't have to worry about, because I think that there's got to be a lot of those 80% in the middle, that don't care one way or the other about guns, that just don't see, they're not afraid. So they think that it's paranoid weird to think you're always afraid about stuff. And people that have been touched by violence are afraid, obviously justifiably. And lots of people can say, well, I'm also justifiably scared because it can happen. And I'm not saying you're wrong, but because other people aren't going to share that view, coming up with finer and finer points to justify that position is never going to ring with them.
So here's my thing. I haven't, that to my knowledge, and I mean, nothing's just pops into my mind. So I'm going to say that I've never been touched by violence, right? For me, firearms are a life experience and culture thing because I was introduced from such a young age, and the enjoyment being it hunting or sport or whatever the case may be. And I also see the value in the defensive aspect of it, right? So we do ourselves a disservice. This is where the Flood Life Project and a lot of the other things come into play. We do ourselves a disservice because we do live in a much, in the safest times as far as the country, I think, as we've ever been in, and arguably worldwide, the safest that we've ever lived in. We don't have the looming, threat every single day of, intercontinental ballistic missiles and just all kinds of craziness going on. But, living in a predominantly, with the exception of some pockets across the country, in a predominantly safe society that nobody feels threatened or anything, that's where a lot of this snowflake sentiment and stuff comes from, is that we've built a safe, we've evolved into a really safe society, and people feel, for the most part, safe, and they don't feel they need to defend themselves or whatever. So I think there's value in talking about firearm ownership from other aspects rather than the defensive, defense against tyranny, defense against personal, self and your family. And I think there's value because there may be somebody that's just not giving firearms a thought, but you know what? Maybe they're really good at shooting clays, or maybe they're really good at knocking X's out of bullseyes, or whatever the case may be, and they've never experienced that. And maybe it's something that's really enjoyable for them to do. They're precision-minded and stuff like that, right? And by potentially getting them into that aspect, then they, much like me, then they start seeing the value of the defensive thing secondary to that.
Let me interrupt you because you made me think of something as you were saying that I don't know if anyone's ever brought up, but we're always thinking about, like, let's get the person to experience guns and see that they like it, right? Let's put it in their hand and see if they like it. And then You know, we appreciate the times when people's eyes light up and they understand, right? But what about this? And this is something, as you were saying it to me, it made me think that I don't think anybody's ever addressed this aspect before. But I think what you were saying is, even if the person isn't as scared, or if they're not concerned, but they just find out that they're really skillful at something or they really enjoy something. But what about this? What about if they find out that they can teach a little youngin or something how to do something that's an individual achievement? Like, and I don't know, I'm not a therapist, but I got to assume that things that you can achieve on your own, things that you can hold on to with two hands, we already know that for therapy and stuff, that firearms can be an effective therapy or an effective treatment, an effective focus for different types of situations, right? Physical and mental and all kinds of situations. Yeah. So, and then just regular kids. I mean, I can remember, I think part of what I am is because when I was a young and I would go to scout camp for a week, and then I figured out that, wait, I can go for a week with my troop, but what if I go with another troop? Can I go for 2 weeks? And my parents were more than happy to get rid of me. So it was like, yeah, you can go up as long as you want. And then I was like, wait a minute, if you're a counselor, you get paid to be here? So I can be at scout camp all summer and get paid? I never did that. But once I started to figure out the pieces to it, right, I started to work towards that. So anyway, I went to be the Cub Scouts, and Scouts are different. Cub Scouts are littler kids. So in order to get towards being a counselor at the real scout camp, I attempted being a counselor at a Cub Scout camp, and their little camp was only like a week long, and the little Cub Scouts would come in and shoot a BB gun, and I would teach them how to shoot a BB gun. There was a parent there watching me to teach a kid how to shoot a BB gun and how it would be, right? But that was mind-blowing. I was like, oh crap, like there's so much more to guns than owning a gun or looking at a catalog about guns or looking through the Bannerman catalog about the history of guns.
Yep.
Like I can teach a little kid how to shoot a gun. That means I can teach other people how to shoot guns. It means I got to go learn how to shoot guns better, right? So there was a lot to that. And what if someone doesn't even realize there's no way. I mean, you've been there way more than me. When a little kid figures out that they can do something on their own, that's got to be amazing. So, and firearms are unique in the fact that with a .22 rifle suppressed, you can do that in a basement, you can do that in a backyard. That could be something at a range, and all of those situations are different, right? That's bonding with your parents. That's like having fun with your family and friends in that kind of environment, or like with the scout group or something in a very small type of a competition. But then you've got the shooting sports are the biggest or the second biggest sport in the world. There's tons of competitive sports, so people can get a kid that's not used to socialization or all the other crap, and maybe it's good at socialization, just needs more places to channel it. All those things can be done with shooting sports. So maybe somebody who's oblivious, doesn't give a shit one way or the other about guns, doesn't realize that aspect to it, like what potential, I don't know what else word to use, like there is with all that angle to it. And I'm looking at kids because you're familiar with doing 4-H and stuff, but it's got to be the same way with old people. And how many old people are dealing with weird diseases and physical issues, and how come shooting sports isn't an option for them? Why isn't there a silenced or a suppressed range at every old folks home? Why aren't there BB gun ranges indoors at old folks homes? I mean, it's something they're familiar with and comfortable with, and then doom on anybody tries to hurt an old person when they got access to armor.
Right. Yeah.
Anyway, I just was going to interrupt you and say, like, yeah, I've always heard of like, hey, let's take somebody to the range, put the perfect gun in their hands and watch them smile. But what about when they figure out they can coach or they can teach or they can provide? Because half the time it's not like they have to be a gun expert. There just has to be that adult standing there that makes sure all the kids aren't being crazy, and then letting the kids learn. And once the kids figure out, whoa, I've got the responsibility to do this. Yep. I know what responsibility's for. Point me in a direction and let me go. Like, now that I understand, get out of my way, right?
Yeah. Youth shooting sports leagues are amazing. I've been around dozens, if not hundreds, in my lifetime, and every single one of them, absolutely amazing. And yeah, any child, any kid, any teenager, any young adult, college age, whatever, certainly has the capacity to do that. And young and old, that's the beautiful thing about the shooting sports. Is there's no age bounds at all. And so, I mean, there is, I mean, obviously if you're, eyesight is greatly diminished, or you're, something with age that you're shaking bad or something like that. Your knowledge doesn't wane necessarily, right? You can still teach, you can still identify things and say, hold it this way, do this with the trigger, adjust the sight this way, and give instruction. But then on the younger scope, obviously you have to be able to, work to it. You have to be big enough and strong enough to hold the rifle up, or to be able to get a proper grip on the handgun or whatever. So you've got on either end of the spectrum, you've got some limitation, but for the most part, zero limitations with, how many do we know that are blind or near blind that enjoy shooting? So, yeah, it's a thing.
Well, it's truly inclusive too, because as you're saying that, I'm thinking that even the most laid up, like broke, tired, whatever, can still watch a video monitor and be an extra set of human eyeballs at a range where they need extra supervision. Or even somebody that doesn't have use of everything except their brain can still help score, right? Like, do some of the work that needs to be done to enable some of these things. So often just having extra adults present is all they need. I can't even tell you how many times, and that was back in the day when people still gave a shit about, gave a shit about kids getting together. But back in the day, it would be tough to get like the third adult needed to go camping or to do this hike or something. So sometimes if you just show up and exist, you don't have to be an expert in your field. You just have to be there.
Yeah. So, we couldn't have any kids under 8, right? We couldn't have out on the range, official practice, that sort of thing. We couldn't have doing things. And we always had little brothers and little sisters. So talking about the younger end of the spectrum, you're absolutely right. I mean, one thing is the parents brought them out, right? So even though they weren't hands-on with the firearms, they were around the report of the firearms, right? They seen how the firearms put holes in paper. More importantly, they seen the safety structure, right? And the rules of the range routine and all of that stuff, right? The routine. And then we let them do things. So we let them hang targets. We let them pass out ammo, right? And different things. And then when they come up and was old enough to shoot, they were even better, right, than the previous class, than big brother or big sister that came in at 10 or 11 years old, because they actually were exposed to the program at 6. Right. So they had 2 years of hanging targets, see how things work, the structure. And as soon as they turned 8, they were ready to go. And it was interesting to see. Shotgunning was one of those things that it was amazing as the club evolved and the years evolved. We had kids younger and younger and younger, take up shotgun and finish the shotgun curriculum. And so much so that we had we got to the point that it couldn't get any. We had an 8-year-old little girl, and little by little, I mean little, right? Finish the shotgun curriculum. And you can't get 8 was the youngest, right? And she was a little bitty thing. And it's like, this is crazy that it's evolved to this point that we've got 8-year-old literal little girls finishing the shotgun curriculum. And it's because they were, at a younger age than they were able to participate. They were exposed to it. It wasn't nuanced. They understood the rules, and they were just so far ahead of the curve when they came into the program.
You're not including the part where they're watching their older sisters and their older friends shoot and lose and win and lose and shoot and win and lose and lose and win and shoot and get discouraged and improve and win. You know what I mean? So they got to see everything with their like growing eyes. And they got to see everybody. So it's like I saw my sister, but my sister and her best friend shoot, and I can do what they aren't doing. You know what I mean? So when they hit the ground running, it was like with a master plan, right? And then can you imagine being the little kids coming up after watching those kids? I mean, we see that. One of the things that's kind of interesting, that's one of the things that I've watched on Instagram is the waves of that. And what happens is it's not like, we come up with a, Voltron at the end or something like a superhero, because what'll happen is there'll be a break in there and then it all stops. And then everybody's got to start that whole thing over again. And it gets really neat at the end of that system, though. At the end of that cycle, that's when you see world's records and people going to the Olympics.
Right.
And the thing is, it's like, that third generation kid who's seen everything, they're going to have a best friend, and they're going to be able to offload their data set to that best friend in their new little kid language. So that little kid might have the physical attributes to do it, and now it has the insight from that other kid who's gathered it all, and that's the fun. It's, I guess that's with all sports, but with shooting sports it matters, right?
Yep.
I'm just throwing in here the link to Clover there. So we've got a couple of things to jump on. One is the poll. I'm just throwing in here. There's the poll. So I had asked. Oh, come on. I went to the Kalashnikov group and didn't even bother going back to my video. So going back to the video, eventually I'll figure out how to work YouTube. We got this poll going. I asked the best gun brand. Put Colt, Smith & Wesson, Ruger, and SIG in there. Did you expect to see Ruger dominate this whole thing?
Yeah, that was my vote.
So Colt, Smith & Wesson, Ruger, and SIG. At first I was going to put Glock in there, but number one, they ain't American, and number two, they only make a gun. I mean, a pistol. That's it. Right. So Colt makes a bunch of stuff, and in the past, set new ground. Smith & Wesson, one of the best companies we've ever had in this country. Ruger does things also, and then I probably could have put a different one in here. What, Remington or something probably would have been better than SIG. But SIG is now in the United States, and they're leaning into the United States. They're cool. So, and isn't the government using? Well, the government uses SIGs, so I put these in here. Anyway, I didn't think Ruger would get that many. Why do you think Ruger's getting that many?
I think people. Well, all I can go really is my perception, but Ruger, I guess other than SIG, as far as name recognition. Only the third as far as longevity as a company, right? Born of a drill, basically. For me, Ruger is not my favoriteest brand or anything. If the question would have been the brand you like the most, it probably would have been Smith & Wesson, right? I look at Ruger and I looked at the amount of firearms they produce. I look at the wide variety of firearms produced. I look at the longevity of some of the models that they produce, like the 1022. I mean, what's changed on it in 60 years or whatever, right? Not really anything, but look how highly customizable that was from the get-go. And the craziness you see nowadays with something like that. But they've been into shotguns, semi-autos, revolvers, rifles, you name it. And they're putting out some really great rifles nowadays. I mean, they always had with the M77 Hawkeyes and some of the other stuff, but long range and precision, they're really kicking it. They're doing a lot as a company, and not that Smith & Wesson or SIG is not, but SIG is, doesn't have nearly the dimensions going on. I don't think. Colt, bless its heart, as far as in our hearts and loving Colt because of the name and whatever, it doesn't have just a whole lot going for it, in my opinion. And Smith & Wesson, I mean, when I go Smith & Wesson, I predominantly think revolver, unfortunately, and I think one-dimensional. So for me, that's why I voted Ruger.
Yeah, those are probably, I think, the common sentiments. I don't know. For Ruger, for me, it's like, I don't know. Every single Ruger I've had is, I like it, but I don't like it. I like if, it's that kind of brand where, like, if you only had one brand, I could see taking a Ruger. But at the same time, if I had to get rid of one, I could sacrifice Ruger. I mean, I like them, but I don't like that.
Yeah, Ruger is not, unlike Colt and Smith & Wesson for sure, Ruger does not really have the appreciative aspect, value in a collection and stuff like that. By no means are they super high end.
That's true, but
it's kind of an everyman.
Nice ones. I mean, there's certainly some commemorative.
No, I agree. There's definitely premium. Yeah, there's definitely.
So that's why they're frustrating.
Yeah.
But if the same list and it was name a brand to get rid of, well, okay, if it was Remington instead of SIG, because I ditched SIG. But if it was name a brand to get rid of, that would be a tougher one. But I probably would get rid of Ruger over Remington, Smith & Wesson, and Colt. Like, I'd keep Colt. Like you said, I got no love for Colt, but Colt is America. I got to keep Colt. It's staying. And Smith & Wesson, I personally like them a lot, even though I don't like a bunch of stuff about Smith. I'm still going to like them because they invented everything, just like Colt. And Remington, come on. And Winchester, please. I don't even like Winchester. Well, I kind of like some of the lever actions, but Most Winchesters I wouldn't own. I don't have any interest in them.
Right.
I'm keeping the brand forever. Like it's Browning, really.
Right.
So yeah, that's tough. And Ruger, he comes along, like you said, he was just some guy who's like, oh, I can make that, I can do that. And then this first thing, the Mark One, like, come on, I hate that gun. Like, I like that gun shooting it, but I hate everything about that gun.
Yeah, I don't like the Ruger Marks either. Yeah, I put the Ruger Marks. People ask me best 22 or whatever, and the Ruger Marks always come in third, always behind the Browning Buck Mark and the Smith & Wesson Victory.
I don't like them.
But it's up there. I mean, it's top three. And I don't absolutely despise it or hate it, and I do own some. But that's what I'm saying about Ruger. I don't think that they make the best necessarily at anything, but they make so many, they're affordable. And so that's all part of, I'm really big into late 1800, early 1900 firearms and Americana, because everybody in their garage was making them. There was so many different companies and offshoots and different things around that time. They had them in feed stores, department stores. I love store brand stuff. That section of J.M. Davis, I always spend time over there because I love it. And so for me, Ruger fits that mold, right? Of, you know what? We do make some very nice stuff, but for the most part, we mass produce firearms for the people. They can afford them. They're functional. They're fairly reliable. You can do whatever the task is at hand with them. And a few of them, I mean, the Ruger, the number ones, for example, the red label shotguns, for example, some of those do have collector value. So there's some aspects of that in Ruger, as well as them just covering all the bases as far as firearms. So they check every box. Maybe not a strong check, but they check every single box. But you're absolutely right. If you start throwing in these iconic brands and change the question to which one do you get rid of? Well, because they don't have that premium name recognition or premium value. On the flip side of that, they may be the first one to go with a question like that.
You know what? They're like grass. They're not the flowers. They're not the bushes or the trees. So when you look at a picture and say, what's the most important thing? Like, what's the most important plant here? Everybody's going to pick like tree and bush and flower. Nobody's going to remember that the grass is even a plant. So they're just there. And I agree with you, man. There could be some neat stuff. And all that said, I mean, you could fill a museum with Ruger data and commemorative stuff and that kind of thing. But he's also the guy who he petitioned hard for 10-round magazines. So same with Smith & Wesson. Like, as much as I like the beginning of Smith & Wesson in the 90s when they bent over to the Clintons, and then I just discovered in that thing, something I was looking at recently, that they also took like millions of dollars, at least almost $1 million in a couple of different payments from the Clintons to develop smart gun technology, Smith & Wesson. So they're just a bunch of people, at this point, they're just a bunch of people who own a machining company and are not shooters. They build machines that either work or don't, and they product test them until they work, but they are not shooters who listen to other shooters and build for shooters and care about our rights.
Right.
They sell out immediately as soon as they can and buy. So that's frustrating.
Yeah, but we get back into that all or nothing mentality. The question was about the company, right? Yeah. It wasn't about the owner of the company and the political standings of the company and whatever. That's a whole different conversation, in my opinion.
Well, for me, that part is part of it. Because you got a company like Colt, they'll waver on whether or not they sell to the public. That's just not true. Like Ruger, that's literally petitioned for 10-round magazines. Not true. Like Smith & Wesson, again, they conceded and took money for it. Not true. So I mean, there are got to be some companies that have been like, either deliberately deliberately in the middle, which is about the best I think we can hope for, because I can't think of any big companies that have done anything above the beyond. So the best we can hope for is companies that haven't conceded. But I just refuse to like Smith and like
let me ask you,
like Springfield. Like, they did some horrible shit. Like, they're not going to recover from that.
Okay. So let me ask you this. The political persuasion or the fact that person petitioned for whatever, does that have any bearing on the size of the company or what type of guns they put out or anything else? If it was a small company that put out one firearm, would that person have done the same exact thing?
Well, I think it applies. In other words, I mean, is that what you're saying? Like, if if it's a smaller company that makes fewer guns and they have the same position, I think the same applies. You got to hold them to like, hey, you're in our industry and you're a
No,
trader.
what I'm getting at is, does the prevalence, the size, the scope of Ruger as a company play into the political standing at all with what they do? Obviously, being a bigger company lends them more ears to,
Oh
more
yeah, yeah,
politician
more
ears to other
influence.
things. But
Yeah.
as far as their willingness to go against the 2A, their willingness to participate in gun control, does that play it in it? Or if they just
Oh
was,
yeah.
if Ruger was a small company with 3 different models that sold a few thousand guns a year, would they still have participated and been an active participant in that?
That's a great point. I think that it's a in scale. So
Yeah.
when Remington pays $80 million, that's a lot different than a small company getting beaten to death. Like even Brico, when Brico got beaten to death and financially for a lawsuit, right? When Colt or Glock, I should say, got attempted to get beaten to death over a lawsuit,
Right.
and then when Remington concedes the lawsuit, that's a whole different thing. So Remington being a massive company with brand, what do they call household brand, household name recognition.
Right.
When Smith and Wesson, a massive company, concedes to the Clintons publicly, that's a way bigger deal than a small company complying out of like either intent or compliance. And then yeah, Ruger, a big company out of nowhere for no reason, getting mad at magazines and going to the federal government with letters and out of nowhere because his idea was I'm a big enough player that if I lay down, they'll quit beating on us. I mean, it was a strategy, but it's a strategy he has to take responsibility for. Now, I think, yeah, so to answer your question, the size of the company means that their actions are all that much more amplified. It means that they have much more to answer for, and we should never forget Smith and Wesson, Ruger, Springfield Armory specifically recently going against the gun shops in Illinois for a financial gain. It was heinous. Sacrificing Second Amendment rights at a state level for profit, that's heinous, especially when they make their money off of sports shooters who are oblivious to this whole thing. It's just heinous. So, yeah, if we forget, if we let them lie, then who pays attention, right? Like, who pays attention? They're not going to pay attention. NSSF and the middlemen, the Brownells and the people who sell their stuff are never going to pay attention. So it has to be the consumers and the people that are paying attention to activism. So what that means to the size of their company, nothing at all. Because you're right, like Ruger is a massive company. That guy is dead. They have different people running it, and it's a different company. Smith and Wesson, those people who complied to the Clintons, I'm sure that's like got to be different multinational companies ago, different humans, I think, but I don't know. Nobody's tracking that. Remington, that's brand new, but who the hell owns Remington? That jumps around like a potato at this point. It's just a commodity that people own. So yeah, it's really frustrating. So I personally think that if we don't, the people who are aware and consuming their products, if we don't pay attention to their histories and who complied and hold them to their consequences, why would the new corporation come along and not comply immediately? They're going to be like, oh, there's no consequences to compliance except that we don't get sued, we don't get attacked by the administration. And then we're supposed to come together and rally. So I don't want to forget, but I also don't want to say that anything that I've said here makes a Smith and Wesson less of an effective machine. It makes the Ruger less well made. That makes the Remington less effective as a hunting rifle. I mean, they all are still have the characteristics they have. It's just that I insist, or I request that we don't forget their actions and the results. The lock on a Smith and Wesson is still there because at one point the company complied, and no one is there to say, let's pull that stupid piece of contraption off of there. It's bad optics, and it's an unnecessary set of parts. It's extra machining and cost, right? There's all these reasons to get rid of it. It's just that there's no impetus to do it because there's no consequence to their actions in the 80s, 90s, whatever it was.
Right. And there's less uproar oftentimes when you're talking about the Hillary hole like that. There's less uproar about them doing it than there would be with them undoing it. You feel what I'm saying? Like if they come out tomorrow and said the Hillary hole's gone on the Smith and Wessons, blah blah blah. Think of the uproar you would get, right? Oh, they're removing a safety device on a gun, blah blah blah, and the world would be, going to fall into chaos because now Smith and Wesson is selling unsafe firearms or something. You can just envision, what it would be like. So
Mhm.
once you go down that road, you know, how do you undo it without massive, heat?
Well, you make a less expensive model. You make the blah 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 model.
Let's
The
start out
final
that way,
special.
maybe. Yeah.
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 And then this is a lot cheaper to make, and now it's the M&Ps don't have that on there because there's no law that puts it out there. Did you know that I was listening to What's His Face's show the other day, and they didn't even know What's His Face was talking to that dude who makes Uzis. Crump was talking to BWE.
Off. Yeah.
Yeah, and they were like blah 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 talking about that Smith and Wesson machine gun that they
Oh
made.
yeah. You told me
And I
about that.
go,
They
"Is it a
didn't even know
Hillary
about
hole?"
the Hillary hole. Yeah.
And they're like, "What the hell's a Hillary hole?" I'm like, "Holy crap, man!" Like you kind of forget like what people don't remember, kind of thing, or what people
Right.
don't even realize there's a name for that kind of
Or
shit.
didn't know in the first place. Yeah.
So that's probably because I blame the lack of, the disrespect. I blame the people, not you, Clover, but the people listening to this, the people that have disrespect for gun shows. Because gun shows is we're not geniuses. We just went to gun shows and hung out with people that were gun nerds. Before there was the internet and chats like this, there was gun shows. And this just happened in real life around tables at gun shows. And if you just stood there and waited and opened your ears, you'd know a ton of crap that you never wanted to or knew you could know.
Right.
And then you'd know. Yeah. So anyway, yeah, this is all just gun show kind of gossip or whatever. So we did have a question. This will be the last one from Woods a while back. Thanks for that. The only question of the day that's been requested, and we definitely blabbed on for a bit here, but we'll end it. So it'll probably end around 90 minutes, which is I think it's better at an hour than that time we went like 2 hours or 3 hours or something. I think
It is. It's more consumable for replay for sure.
Yeah, exactly. And you can always listen to another one.
But
Clover.
I mean, we've had a great conversation. We got off the rails with the Q&A, but that's part of the fun of this Q&A, at least for me, is how it provokes other conversation. So, I mean, you never know what we're going to get into and what you're going to hear and what we're going to talk about, which is kind of cool.
It ain't going to be news of the day, and it ain't going to be regurgitated.
And we're not going to sell you a no-light.
Oh, snap, I forgot to sell them O-lights. Now, we are going to try to sell you that book, Rise America's Gun, though. So
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Let's see. So the question was 336. Is that a caliber?
That is a Marlin rifle.
Oh, okay. So I'm active duty Army, and I have access to a rimfire 22, and it's the same thing as our M4s. Rather than the bolt, I need to know if the round's trajectory difference from a 5.56 or 2.23. Plan on using it for personal use to train, but I want to find the info I need to zero compared to the 300 meter zero. So it sounds like he's found a 22 version of an AR, and other than the bolt, I need to know if the round's trajectory is different from a 5.56. So yeah, I mean, I can't imagine the trajectory is anywhere near 5.56.
No. So he's talking 22 long rifle. So you're talking rimfire. You're talking, it's not the same diameter. It doesn't feed the same. It doesn't operate the same. It does not use the gas system. For example. So the first thing I would say with that question is maybe need to dive into some research and homework and the difference between a 22 long rifle AR, right, and a 5.56 2.23, because they're massively different if you really get down to it, and you need to understand that. The next thing should be obvious, and I mean, even though this person is in the military, I mean, that doesn't mean they're gun gurus, and I get that, but it should be obvious by looking at a 2.22, 5.56, and a 22 long rifle that the trajectory is going to be nowhere near. I've actually shot 22s out to 300, 400, 500 yards, and at 300 yards, he's talking about a 300 yard zero, for example. At 300 yards, you can you've got time to come off the rest, look through the spotting scope, and watch the balloon pop if you're shooting balloons at 300 yards. And it's amazing. Try it if you've never done it, because you can literally see the projectile push in the balloon. It's moving so slow. It's like you push it. It's like you push it with a 22. Yeah. It's like you push it with your finger and make it pop. You know what I mean? The balloon dimples in, and it's hilarious. It's hilarious. It's the funniest thing you've ever seen.
Oh no, I've never even seen. I've seen balloons, but I've never thought about that concept to illustrate the loss of energy at distance. That's awesome.
It's crazy, and I mean, and that's without.
It's one of those punching balloons that kids get with a rubber band on it. It's like really heavy balloon.
Oh, that would stop it. a balloon that thick, there's not a doubt in my mind it would stop
Dude,
it.
then you got to film that. That is
Yeah,
a best illustration ever of 9mm effectiveness. I mean,
right, right. So, with that being said, yeah, he's absolutely right. You got to scrap that 300-yard zero idea. My way of thinking, you're not going to be able to train with that and shoot it at 300 yards. You'll be able to get your
well, no, he's talking a 300-yard zero. So in other words, there's different zeros for a rifle, and he's talking
right. But what I'm saying is to zero that, to be able to utilize effective range. At the end of the day, it's not going to matter because there's going to be so much drop. It's going to act so much differently. Now you'll get your manual of arms, and you're being able to reload magazines and your muscle memories and your other things. Great for that. But if you're talking about your holds and things like that, if you're training for that, throw that out the window. Not going to happen.
Well, that's the thing. I think you can probably mimic the hold. Yeah. We're talking. I'll show that in a second here. But here, let me. Yeah. I was cutting you off. You want to finish your thought?
I would do a zero if I'm thinking, military application M4 style 22 long rifle. I'm probably gonna zero at about 75. And that's going to be, that's going to give me out to maybe 150, 200, being able to adjust quickly. And then I'm going to have to remember adjustments, of course, for anything closer in as well. But you're going to have to push out that zero from, the 300-yard zero is also like a 25 or a 35-yard zero. And so when you're talking 223 or 5.56, I can't remember exactly, but it's something like that. And with a 22 long rifle, you're going to have to push it out further than that, without a doubt. Twice that, I would say.
So I was going to go exactly that part. Like the 300-meter zero is also another zero because it goes up and down. So it's basically the same as saying like a 25 or a 30. I can't remember either. But I have a video about that, and I was going to illustrate that. But here's the deal. I went to go play this video. Have you seen this commercial before? Play up on videos when you're watching them? I've seen this now for about 2 weeks. Yeah, you're still muted. Have you seen this one? Has anyone seen this one?
Is that the solvent trap commercial?
So watch this. This is on my fucking video. My own video. And watch this commercial that you're about to watch. I'm not going to play. I got to play the whole thing because you're going to be pissed. You're going to get pissed, and then you're going to get more pissed.
Do we need the audio?
Yeah.
Those things that are definitely not suppressed.
Oh, is it going to get me for having the audio?
Oh, I've seen these. That particular company steals videos from multiple people.
So this is dude saying it, right? He's saying it.
They have baffles like suppressors. They're often rated for diameters like suppressors, and they screw on threaded barrels like suppressors. Well, but they're still not suppressors because they don't have a hole in the other end, so you could legally own one without going through the paperwork to own a suppressor because it isn't one. It's been machined.
Is this a YouTuber or is this the person who made the video?
That is yep, because there's Mike. So yeah, I've seen this commercial before, and it really pissed me off. I don't know that they were given any permission to use those people. I don't think so either. And there's a lot of commercials on YouTube that are doing this now. And it's aggravating.
That's FBI plan. There's no way that's not some kind of honeypot garbage. That's ridiculous. That's heinous right there. And our tax for that heinous shit.
What's even more, I've had internal discussions with YouTube about things like that, right? Because they allow it. It's like you want to allow anybody showing the inside of a suppressor for an educational purposes or whatever, and they will, admittedly, in the proper context. We have a problem. Yeah, we have a problem as creators with not doing a good enough job with video production and explaining things. But yeah, they'll put ads up like that, but don't show a suppressor coming apart on the video. Oh, good Lord, it's the end of the world,
So that pissed me off. I've seen it a couple of times now. I don't know what to do. You can't even report it. You can just thumb it down. Other ads you can report and stuff. You can't report that. So back in the day, I seen a Haley video, and I'm not the biggest fan.
You would have to do a screen share record, but you could.
Oh, well, no, I'm saying I report.
Oh, report the ad. Yeah, no.
Yeah, like sometimes you can, like on Instagram, you can say, I don't want to see this because of this
Well,
reason.
Yankee and Guns and Gear, and I mean, they need to be
Was
calling the
that
company
first?
up, sending them a
Was,
legal letter. That's what they need to be
oh,
doing.
I would hope Yankee makes a fortune off of that. Was that guy in the middle also a YouTuber? The
No, the
guy who,
guy with the like the white table and all of that.
yeah, you think that was the guy who put the
I,
video
I
together?
I think so. I don't recognize that guy. I should say
Okay.
that much, but that doesn't mean anything.
Yeah,
I
that'll be
channels all
nothing.
the
There's a million YouTubers I've never
Yeah, I
seen.
find channels all the time with hundreds of thousands of subscribers, and I'm like, who's this guy or girl for that matter?
No, I'm sure that's from a Yankee video. I've never
Yeah,
watched a Guns and Guy video,
no,
but
both of those are legit videos they have on their channel. Yeah,
they just plain out stole it. Yeah.
yep.
So yeah, Tony's saying Sting. So here's the deal. Back in the day, I seen a Haley video. I'm not a big fan of Haley, and his video was one of the Magpul videos maybe on long distance. And I got done watching the video, and I'm like, thanks, I don't understand this any more than I did, because he was just showing this kind of thing when they would say 25 yard zero, 300 yard zero, and blah blah blah. So ideally, you can see a similarity between that 25 yard zero and that 300 yard zero. And I guess you could possibly say there's some similarities between these others, right? And then they might show it in this type of graph. And it just made no sense to me. So I basically made a 7-minute video here. This was back in 2011. This is when I still gave a shit about doing stuff. And then made a visualization type of thing. I'll just play it without the sound play it at double speed here, if I can do it. So if you don't know, you can watch things at twice the speed. So basically, I attempted to do a visualization with PowerPoint. So I just made a PowerPoint, and then I would hit next on my space bar as I was saying stuff, and then use my mouse thing on PowerPoint and made a screen capture as I was doing it. So basically, path of bullet is very much like the water coming out of a hose, and people realize if you constrict the hose, you can get it to spray further, but you can also arc it or whatever. And that's basically what's happening with the bullet. Our barrel is sending the bullet out a little bit up, like it's shooting a little bit up compared to the straight line of our line of sight. And if you visualize that path of the bullet going up a little bit and then back down to where we actually hit the target, there's that concept, and that's how these targets are attempting to explain the differences between holdovers and differences between different zeros. And the reason you'd want to do this is because of your, what'd you call it before? Your, the reason you exist. Like cops are going to be different than military. Military has an authority
Rules of
and
engagement. Yeah.
Thanks. Rules of engagement. Military has rules of engagement. If they see somebody at 700 yards, they better take care of that enemy at 700 yards instead of 10 yards. A police officer, they have a different thing. Maybe 100 yards they got to deal with. So what I did is I took a range and, a 200-yard range, and I stuck these cardboard silhouette targets every so often, 25 yards, 50 yards, whatever, going down that range. And now if you think of your line of sight being a straight line to the target at that 300 yards, the bullet is actually going up and coming back down. So if you visualize the holes that bullet is going to make in each of these paper targets as it goes down range, you're going to see that trajectory or that holdover or whatever you want to call the word. You're going to see that difference in your line of sight, which is a straight line, and the actual path of the bullet, which, in this particular case at a 25-yard zero, you're going to get this pattern. And the colors show you which target we're talking about, and that's how it relates to these kind of graphs, and that's how it relates to what we see on a target there. And that's where you get into all kinds of debates, because when you look at it, some of these you need to shoot at, if you get a 300-yard, when some of the more extreme ones are a 25, 300-yard versus some of these others that are flatter. If you're going to shoot someone at 700 yards effectively, you need to shoot them in the face, or at least aim at their face, or aim at their nuts sometimes, because you're aiming so high that, to have an effective shot close up, you got to remember to hit, aim for their pelvises. So a military person is going to be able to hit you at 700 yards, and they're probably aiming at your nuts every time you're close to them. Where a police officer, is going to shoot at your head at 300 yards and is going to shoot you in the chest at 25 yards, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So anyway, this was an attempt to explain that short, and I did a better job in 7 minutes if you want to see to explain it. But yeah, I think that's what we're talking about is he wanted a gun that could emulate his 300-yard shot, which is a huge trajectory. And he wants to do it with 22. So you can imagine if you were going to shoot a 22 to 300 yards, you'd have to shoot almost straight in the air, let's say. So the holdover, or whatever you want to call the adjustment you'd have to make to shoot someone close range to that you could also shoot at 300, like Clover was saying, is you'd almost be shooting up into their head, like from their waist. You would not be able to emulate that.
Be further than that, most likely. The drop at 300 yards on a 22 is something like 6 or 7 foot.
Yeah. So you mean you'd almost be holding it like a grenade launcher or something?
It's a whole person at 300 yards. You're literally aiming a whole person above them. You would be with a 22 long rifle.
So it's an interesting question, but the thing is, you don't really need to do that necessarily. Or if you're going to do that, just get a 223 and just practice. Because at this point, is there anything cheaper than just shooting 5.56 for practice?
Yeah, it's a matter of getting your hands on it right now. The 22 long rifle is probably a little easier to get your hands on, and it's definitely cheaper. I mean, it's half the price, roughly.
Oh, well, I guess I was saying as far as if you went away from 22 so that you could just shoot with an effective caliber, there's no other effective caliber that's cheaper than 223.
Cheaper? Not really. No, not really. But I mean, there's other, just to put a different spin on this, we were talking about, this is obviously military and rules of engagement type thing. But, competitive purposes, there's a reason for that too. And, having that zero and finding that sweet spot, because if you're shooting something like, let's say still silhouette, where you've got a really small chicken all the way up to a fairly large ram, right? And anywhere from 35 meters all the way out to like 110 meters, you've got to be able to adjust pretty much on the fly with that. And so you find that sweet spot at the crosshair intersection, right? This is the way we always did it, is we find that sweet spot at the crosshair intersection. And that's why I'm talking 60 to 75 yards. And that's why I'm thinking in terms of what we used to do silhouette. And then you use a mil-dot scope, that's got dots up and down and across side to side. And then you figure out where your other distances lie, right? So like you're right. So like for your 110 meter, you may be 2 dots below the crosshair. For your 35 meter, you may be 2 dots above your crosshair, right? But you've got that range of motion to quickly adjust.
Well, yeah, that gets fun when you start talking reticles, because once you understand what zero is and the concept of holdover and all those different terms and stuff, basically once you kind of have it in your head what the bullet's doing, then like Clover says, and then you get windage with the other dots on different kind of reticles, right? So yeah, and then you start figuring out, well, this much bend of a plant is this many dots, and that much bend of a leaf is this many dots, type of thing, and yeah, it gets to be sort of a fun.
Well, and you can range that way,
replicable.
Right? Because you know the distance. You know the distance between your dots. So if you know about what the normal size of the object you're looking at is, like you're like, okay, well the ear
or a car door.
Yeah, you're like, okay, well that basketball down there is so many inches across. Well, that fits perfectly between these 2 dots. So every dot is so many inches, right, at that distance. So, and that's how people range on the fly.
And that's why clarity of glass is all important.
This is true.
All right, well, that got a fun end and left you hanging. So let's see, Tony Simon is out there, had the 2A for E diversity shoot on the 16th. Right on. Appellation is saying minute of face for years. That's how I judge it. Yeah. Well, you got to shoot into quarters on the range so that you can shoot into faces when it matters, right? Always aim at their nuts. That helps when they've been vaccinated. I don't know. It sounds good. I don't understand that. Should I get a 300 Blackout pistol?
Always.
So 300 Blackout's big deal is that it fits in a regular AR style magazine. You have to change. You don't even have to change the follower, and you just have to change the barrel, and you don't have to change the bolt. So it's just changing the barrel, and then it's also the easiest or best to suppress.
Yeah, it's really good. I do not run standard metal mags or P mags with 300 Blackout, and tons of people do. But I was Blackout before Blackout was even Blackout. It was called 300 Whisper. Talk about this all the time. So I was into it long before it was a fad boy thing. And I find that the Lancer mags work way best, especially when you get up into heavier projectile ammunition. And that's one of the beauties of 300 Blackout is, I can run now. Admittedly, you have to pretty much have to hand load if that's the case, because if you want to take advantage of 300 Blackout, because commercially they don't offer as much of a variety as you can get out of it. But I can load anything from a 90 grain all the way up to a 265 grain, and that's unheard of in any other caliber. It's crazy.
I'm not gonna say you should or shouldn't, because I'm gonna say it's up to you as far as buying one.
Well, I'm never going to discourage anybody from buying a new firearm. So that's my stance. As long as your rent's paid and there's food in the pantry, my answer is yes.
Oh, I think Brian is saying, is that the guy in the middle between Yankee and what's his face? So they horked off at 3 different people's stuff. That's messed up. So hopefully they get sued 3 times. So I saw Tony out there. I wanted to make sure Tony knows that we do our advanced class tonight. So if you're around this evening, you're welcome. I think I send Woods an invite as well. So on Saturdays, we do this Ask Gun questions at noontime. And then later on in the evening, well, basically midnight Eastern, I think, right? I think, yeah. We do advanced class where we don't talk about news of the day. We basically try to create a place like we have at the Gun Rights Policy Conference in the evenings to just chat about 2A, or like any event when the 2A people get together, place to just chat about strategy and big picture stuff instead of being bogged down with reactionary news of the day or the immediate issues that we've got. So everybody's welcome to participate in that. Everything I do gets at least a quarter or a third or whatever you want to call this portion of the screen for interactivity. We had a great show today. Wanted to keep it at an hour, but it went to almost 2 by the time we had fun chatting with everybody. Hopefully it was, like Clover says, interesting and a bit diverse. I'll throw Clover's link back in here if you want to plug whatever. You got a bunch of projects, plug some of them.
Yeah, probably plug the GunTuber Academy, because that's where we've kind of moved all of the content creator nerdy stuff. Plan on filming another video for that hopefully today. The rain will move out and go away. But yeah, got that, and then got obviously other videos and stuff dropping on the main channel. So
right on. I want to plug the GunTuber Academy as well. So Clover has been doing efforts to give people awareness and insight to being a content creator on YouTube specifically, as well as other platforms and different elements, I guess, software, hardware, networking, all that kind of stuff, counseling, coaching. And for all kinds of reasons, I guess he ripped it off his main channel and shoved it over here on a new channel. So it's an interesting project. I highly encourage people to check it out. And you can be one of the first 50 subscribers at this point. And how often do you get to be part of the beginning of a project?
Right.
Okay, so again, thanks everybody. There's Gizzard out there, does a live chat every Friday night. He'll be doing a live chat tomorrow morning. I guess we can link to that as well. And do you already have that posted? I think you have to go to, here's how you have to do it. So just so FYI for you people that insist on posting your stuff in the future, I got to go over here, and then I got to go over here, and then I got to go to upcoming, and then I got to click on this in order to plug your stuff. So I think what you could do alternatively, and I don't know if I can look at my own channel the same way you look at my channel, because we see our channels differently. But see how mine has live here? Somewhere down here, it says my upcoming live stream. So that's one of, what do they call these little thingies? These sections?
A shelf.
They make a shelf that says you can put your upcoming stuff. So especially those of you that do live streams, Locked and Loaded Latinos and others, you can tell people and let them know what's coming, especially if you're one of these people that post stuff ahead of time all the time. Let the world know. So that's the kind of stuff you're going to learn on the academy over there that Clover's doing.
Yep.
But anyway, then the Clover also does videos on his own channel, and he participates in lots of other live stuff that's happening out there. Crump didn't show up because he don't care about 2A that much to show up on a Saturday. But who else is doing live 2A stuff? I already mentioned Locked and Loaded Latinos. You got Gun Freedom Radio out there. But I guess specifically, you got Gizzard in the morning. I think I just linked to his channel. And then Locked and Loaded Latinos is tonight. Shit, they're tonight as well. Crap, am I going to be right on top of them?
No, that's tomorrow. That's tomorrow. Right
No,
there.
normally it's tomorrow. Tonight they're going live at
Oh, are they?
yeah, because it's some
wow.
big deal or whatever.
Oh, okay.
So again, look, nothing here like, oh, they got a live show where I wouldn't know because I'm at their channel. I got to go to videos. I got to go to uploads. I got to go to upcoming live streams. Now I can click on it. So yeah, that'll be in 2 hours. Oh, I'm definitely not stepping on them.
Yeah.
Snap. So yeah, we're doing this right at the right time. So guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to go play with some 3D printers technology here for the next couple of hours. I'll be encouraging you to check out the best live stream that ever happens. Oh, speaking of, since we got this dude's attention, let's go check out this guy's channel, right? Because we get a podcast every month from this dude, right? Every month. Let's see. So because it happens every month, it just shows right up in my list here, right? Right at the top of the list, because we get a podcast from this guy every month. Every single month, except we haven't got one in 2 months. So what's up with that? So eventually this guy will podcast again, we hope. But he does other stuff, I guess. I guess in real life he's doing things.
Right.
So yeah, tonight is Locked and Loaded at 7 p.m. Thanks. So is it already 5 p.m.? I don't know how you East Coast people live such a fast lifestyle. You always seem to be 3 hours ahead of me. All right, we're wrapping it up. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. Lots of good 2A stuff for you this afternoon and into the evening. Gizzards out there.
Thank you for supporting our projects. If you'd like to buy us a cup of coffee, check out our Patreon channel.
The guys and gals of gunwebsites.com encourage you to take a CCW class every year, practice at least once a month, and carry every day. Thank you for watching gunwebsites.com.